Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban were viewed for almost 2 decades as the ideal Hollywood Nashville couple. An actress who won an Oscar and a country music artist who defied the odds. However, everything were collapsing behind the duets and red carpets. According to court filings, Nicole battled to keep the marriage intact, but eventually filed for divorce after 19 years. No wedding band, no love song for Nicole, and changed lyrics that alluded to a revised history were all present in his first public performance after the breakup. The representation of the golden pair has crumbled, and Nicole's side is now showing. We examine more closely what made them so admired, and what caused one of Hollywood's most famous love tales to end. The quiet idealist who became a Hollywood star is Nicole. Australian parents who were temporarily overseas in Honolulu, Hawaii, welcomed Nicole Mary Kidman into the world in 1967. Janelle, her mother, was a nurse and teacher, and Anthony Kidman, her father, was a scientist and clinical psychologist. When she was still a young girl, the family moved back to Sydney, where she was raised in a home that valued ambition and discipline. Young Nicole was incredibly bashful, in contrast to the intelligent, poised person she eventually became. When asked to speak in front of the class, she would blush so much that her teachers were concerned she lacked confidence. But along with that reticence came a strong imagination. Performance was her haven. She began by taking ballet lessons, then drama classes, and finally youth theater groups as a way to express the feelings she struggled to articulate in everyday life. She was gifted by the time she was a teenager. At the time, Australia's film industry was booming, so she took advantage of the opportunity to gain roles in television films before being chosen for the 1983 cult thriller BMX Bandits. Although her height and porcelain beauty made her stand out, directors were persuaded that she was meant for more by her emotional range. When the late 1980s rolled around, Hollywood called. Nicole met her first great love and her first big heartbreak, Tom Cruise, during this ascent. They were one of the most photographed couples in Hollywood after getting married in 1990. The marriage brought Nicole prestige, but it also caused her anguish. Their union was plagued by the long-lasting effects of Tom's religion, Scientology. It's well known that when the marriage ended in 2001, she lost both her husband and primary custody of their 2 adopted children, Isabella and Connor, even though she hardly ever discusses those years in detail. This wound was profound. It was later disclosed by friends that Nicole felt deprived of motherhood itself and confined to the periphery of her kids' lives. This separation would become one of the most defining catastrophes in the life of a woman who yearned for her own family. Perhaps it is no accident that she was resolved to restore the lost dream of family and home when she eventually met Keith Urban. The guitar-wielding, tormented dreamer is Keith. Nicole and Heath Lionel Urban were born in the same year in Whangarei, New Zealand, on the other side of the Tasman Sea. His mentality started to take on a restless and rebellious color there, always looking for a way out, after his family relocated to Queensland, Australia, when he was still a small boy. In addition to running a convenience store, Bob, his father, had a deep love for country music. Not exactly a popular genre in Australia's suburbs. Keith was already performing when he was 6 years old, thanks to his encouragement to take up the guitar. With its stories of tragedy and redemption, country music provided him with both therapy and a sense of identity. Despite his extraordinary musical ability, his family life was less amicable. He was allegedly raised in a tense and financially troubled household, which might have influenced his quest for stability throughout his life. During his teenage years, he played in local pubs and talent shows, developing both his voice and his reputation as a rock star-edged, gloomy country outsider. He quickly left school to devote himself full-time to music. There was no backup plan for Keith. His sole means of escape was music, but with skill came devils. By his 20s, he was already dabbling with drugs and alcohol. When fame came, he wasn't steady. It accelerated the mayhem. In search of fame in the early 1990s, he relocated to Nashville. He finally made his breakthrough in 1999 with his self-titled American debut album, following years of arduous touring. With his skill on the guitar, his disheveled hair, and his voice full of desire, Keith became the next country music star. However, there was self-destruction mixed in with the achievement behind the scenes. In 2005, he had already spent time in and out of rehab when he first met Nicole. His addictions caused him to constantly worry that he might lose everything he had worked so hard to achieve. On paper, Nicole and Keith appeared to come from opposing worlds: Hollywood affluence versus the gritty realities of Nashville. The burden they carried was what truly held them together. Nicole was cautious of authority and treachery because of the wounds from a broken marriage and a lost family. Although Keith had seen both stardom and obscurity, he never quite overcame his tendency to undermine himself. Both were at junctures of transition when their paths eventually intersected. Nicole had come back stronger than ever after her divorce, securing an Academy Award for The Hours and solidifying her status as one of the best actors of her generation. She still craved stability after 10 years of upheaval, though, and her emotions were still raw. Meanwhile, Keith was a rising star, establishing himself in the fiercely competitive American country music industry. However, the demands of an industry that values appearance just as much as sound, the perks of celebrity, never-ending touring, temptation, and other factors were driving him to the edge. He wanted someone who could give him a sense of purpose and help him see beyond the stage lights. One cannot fail to notice the foreshadowing when looking back. Her need for stability and control will always conflict with Keith's restless, compulsive nature. There was hope for mending in their relationship. She might be able to reunite with her family, and her stability might offer him atonement, but it also bore the seeds of future strife. Being with another star came with its own set of risks for Nicole. She had learned during her marriage to Tom Cruise just how cruel the public eye could be. However, she sensed weakness and vulnerability in Keith, which triggered her protective nature. Her success and discipline exposed his own volatility, but her love gave him the opportunity to become the man he had always desired. She served as both a mirror and an inspiration for him. Their upbringing had shaped them into complicated, damaged people. It seemed fated when they ultimately collided in 2005. However, in reality, it was more akin to erratic chemistry, paths colliding, and romantic fairy tales. The eventual meeting of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban in 2005 was widely reported as a Hollywood dream come true. Two Australians who were born in the same year and have endured hardships in the past are both world-renowned. Their collision occurred just when their lives appeared to be about to change. Glossy magazines and red carpets portrayed their encounter as fate. On a deeper level, however, the relationship was more about two wounded individuals holding on to the promise of salvation than it was about destiny. In January 2005, the first light was ignited at the Gue Day USA Gala in Los Angeles. An homage to Australians employed in Hollywood. Although Nicole had only recovered from the turmoil of her divorce from Tom Cruise, she had already rebuilt her career and was a proud Oscar-winning actress. Keith, on the other hand, was the up-and-coming Nashville artist whose songs were beginning to resonate with the general public. Upon their introduction, she subsequently said that she didn't believe he was interested. Despite his reserve, he was courteous. Despite exchanging phone numbers, he didn't give her a call for months. Years later, she admitted that the romance almost ended before it started because of his initial lack of approach. Something clicked, though, when he eventually contacted out. Once they started dating, it didn't take long. By May, they had been pictured together. She also described him in interviews as the man who had captured her heart at the end of the year. Having survived the oppressive scrutiny of her marriage to Tom, he was a symbol of liberation for her. He was unrefined, raw, and passionate in every manner, unlike Tom Cruise. To Keith, she was a symbol of respectability, grace, and a calming power he had never experienced. By November, he was accompanied by Nicole on red carpets as both her date and partner. There was no denying their chemistry. And the two were heavily covered by the media. America was where the golden children of Australia had discovered each other. Just over a year after they started dating, in June 2006, they were married in a grandiose ceremony at the Cardinal Soretti Memorial Chapel on the Manly Peninsula in Sydney. His signature long hair made him look like the quintessential romantic troubadour, while she wore a Balenciaga gown with a stunning veil. Stars from country music and Hollywood royalty graced the guest list, but the event's closeness was what really made it noteworthy. During the reception, he reportedly serenaded her as she entered the church by candlelight, fighting back tears. Fans saw it as the idyllic conclusion to their respective tumultuous pasts. After enduring her former lover's domineering hold, Nicole had discovered a man who seemed to love her without conditions. In the meantime, one of the most renowned actresses in the world had given Keith his salvation. Unfortunately, reality was not as ideal as fairy tales. It cracks first. Keith checked himself into an alcohol misuse treatment center just 4 months after the wedding. They suffered a terrible blow to their marital happiness. Nicole had just completed her thank you notes when she found herself in a predicament. The tabloids jumped in and claimed she had a time bomb for a husband. He felt humiliated by the relapse. He had promised that he would be stable because of her love. But he soon reverted to his old behaviors. Constantly guarding her personal life, Nicole put devotion ahead of shame. While visiting him in rehab, she supported him. Additionally, she declined to allow the media to enjoy her failure. He acknowledged in subsequent interviews that she had saved his life at that time. Insiders, however, saw something more nuanced. After being denied the opportunity to salvage her marriage to Tom, she was now putting herself into the role of protector and healer with Keith. She trusted him and had faith in second opportunities. Much of their marriage would be characterized by that loyalty. Both for the better and the worse. Despite the rocky beginning, the couple worked to establish themselves as one of Hollywood's few lasting romances over the ensuing years. She kept landing big movie parts, juggling highly praised roles in Rabbit Hole with high-profile productions like Australia. He cemented his place as one of the biggest stars in country music in the meanwhile. Touring non-stop and receiving praise, including several Grammy Awards. In public, they were loving. She once said that he was the one who made her come back to life. Often, with tears in his eyes, Keith thanked her at award events. The carefully manicured image belied the stress within. She frequently filmed overseas, whereas he had to travel for extended periods of time for his job. Their goal was to make it work. Even following guidelines like never being away for more than a few weeks. However, insiders said that they often had conflicting schedules. Nicole clung to the idea of family since she was so terribly hurt by being separated from Isabella and Connor Cruz. She threw herself into parenting upon the arrival of Sunday Rose, their first daughter, and Faith Margaret, their second daughter, in 2008 and 2010, respectively, with Keith. His children were his favorite. But found it difficult to manage the hectic life of a touring artist while also being a father. They were able to market themselves as the remedy for Hollywood cynicism later on. Interviewers praised them as evidence that true love could endure in the spotlight. The picture of a close-knit group was further supported by pictures of the family at the airport, where she was holding the girls as he followed with bags. On the inside, though, their relationship had deteriorated. He struggled to stay sober, which was a persistent issue. Her demand for stability occasionally manifested as control, and others suggested that the couple's disagreements were more profound than either of them acknowledged. Nevertheless, they persisted, committed to keeping the fairy tale intact. The rapid intensity of falling in love and getting married quickly, while overcoming the crisis nearly immediately, had characterized their early years together. They never really slowed down to address the fissures that were beginning to appear in their foundation because of that intensity. The facade of a redeemed bad kid and his patient savior was maintained for almost 20 years. Nobody realized at the time how the same frenzied energy that had brought them together would ultimately lead to heartache. Fairy tales were always brittle and based as much on performance and hope as they did on truth. But the strain was increasing. Under pressure, love. Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman had already weathered more upheaval in their first 10 years of marriage than most couples could in a lifetime. Long separations brought on by work obligations, rehab just months after the wedding, and juggling the duties of parenting 2 kids in the spotlight all contributed to the ongoing sense of stress. They continued to be a representation of tenacity for years, nevertheless. Tension-related rumors started to appear more regularly by the middle of the decade. Rumors circulated about disagreements over timetables, Keith's partying, and even Nicole's intensity. The pair frequently put up a unified face in interviews, denying the rumors time and time again. Keith would agree, calling Nicole his rock, and Nicole would frequently assert that they had never been stronger. Even if they are well concealed, cracks eventually show. According to the couple's close friends, she had become tired of bearing the emotional burden of his difficulties. Although she appreciated his artistic abilities, she was concerned about his mental stability. Heath, on the other hand, occasionally became upset when he was portrayed as the one in need of saving. Rather than being her project, he supposedly wished to be her equal. What held them together for so long was their contradiction, which also caused them to drift apart. Nicole was afraid of his vulnerability, but she liked it. He admired her resilience. I thought it overpowered it. Their marriage was a never-ending battle between passion and weariness, between resisting and saving. Throughout this time, the public perception that they were the love tale that had overcome all obstacles persisted obstinately. Few realized how much of their own energy was used to support the facade and how much work it took to keep that illusion going. They were under tremendous pressure to live up to their reputation. They were more than a husband and wife pair. They represented hope for fans who wished to think that love could triumph over celebrity, distance, and addiction. Every image and every move made in public became a part of the legend. However, mythology may be both uplifting and depressing, as history frequently demonstrates. Keith and Nicole had fallen prey to their own fantasy. Their divergent approaches to raising their daughters were also evident. Conscious of the lessons she had learned from her own experience with a broken family, Nicole placed a strong emphasis on order, routine, and protecting her kids from the craziness of celebrity. As the fun dad, Keith tended to be more forgiving. Insiders speculated that although their daughters loved both parents, Nicole occasionally felt undercut and he occasionally felt chastised for not being serious enough. The violent altercations that tabloids envision were not these. Over time, these differences eroded closeness and trust because they were more subdued. The tabloid gossips and, ultimately, gets divorced. As the 1920s rolled around, tabloids started making assumptions about marital problems. Narratives of conflicts, time spent apart, and rumors about Keith's past troubles appeared. Keith and Nicole both denied the rumors, frequently showing up together as soon as a story surfaced. In interviews, Nicole would claim that "we've never been stronger," dispelling doubters with her cool demeanor. However, the rumors were true notwithstanding such protestations. Keith's struggle with sobriety persisted. Insiders claimed that her dread of relapsing never completely went away, even if there is no proof that his decline was as severe as it once was. She was always on guard, sometimes to the point of stress. Even when Keith was doing everything correctly, it may feel oppressive to be watched and questioned. Nicole, on the other hand, got tired of being the anchor all the time. Though she missed balance, she loved him. Desired a marriage where she wasn't always on the lookout for the next big thing. Possibly the most telling indication of their disintegration was the distinction between their private and public identities. They were wandering, fighting, and circling around unsolved issues in private. In public, they emphasized the fairy story even more. The significance of their red carpet appearances grew, as if they were performing for themselves rather than the cameras, reminding the public and each other of the romance they once thought they had. Keith would hold Nicole's hand tightly at events, caressing her shoulder and murmuring in her ear. Observers noted that although she would grin calmly, it appeared more practiced than genuine. The affection seemed genuine but tense. As if players were reciting lines they had learned long ago. There are unspoken grudges in every marriage, but in theirs, they became more pronounced every year. He needed her to be both his wife and his savior, and Nicole supposedly disliked this. Her capacity to dominate not only herself but also him and their kids infuriated him. As well as their image with military accuracy. Their dynamic is one of perpetual negotiation, according to friends close to the pair. Whereas she wants security, he desired freedom. She desired tranquility, whilst he desired passion. Although neither was incorrect, their needs were rarely the same. By 2023 and 2024, the murmurs amplified. It was implied by anonymous individuals in entertainment magazines that they were together but leading different lifestyles. She started going to events by herself, and paparazzi pictures started to back up the theory. He was seen on tour sans his wedding band in the meantime, as they both steered clear of interview inquiries regarding one another. The pair, however, fought the collapse story. Nicole frequently mentioned how difficult marriage was. An acknowledgement that was both humble and illuminating. She would be his everything, he would insist. He started to sound more like rehearsals of an old screenplay than impromptu statements. Every unraveling, however, eventually has a tipping point. In the summer of 2025, theirs did as well. By then, the fissures had grown out of the cracks. Her daughters were getting more and more attention from her, withdrawing from the circus of conjecture and into family. In the meantime, he immersed himself into music, going on more intense tours and putting all of his heart into often introspective performances. According to those closest to them, the decision to split up wasn't particularly dramatic. There was no last debate, no single scandal. It was the gradual realization that they were no longer supporting one another instead. Nicole, who was devastated yet determined, understood that she could no longer be both a caretaker and a partner. Keith decided to take a back seat after growing tired of Nicole's demands. Her ultimate divorce filing, alleging irreconcilable differences, came as a shock to the globe in late September 2025. However, the outcome seemed certain to those who had been paying careful attention. For almost 2 decades, these two had created one of Hollywood's most beloved tales, one of perseverance, redemption, and enduring love. Even though the legal records only stated irreconcilable differences, they conveyed the weight of a far more complicated story. A very public unmasking ensued, with each step revealing the unvarnished reality of a marriage, rather than only a formal separation that had been battling for a long time to survive. Nicole filed in Tennessee's Davidson County, where the couple had kept up a family residence. Although the documentation was simple and even controlled, it had far-reaching ramifications. She was leaving her husband of 19 years, with 2 kids and innumerable vows of unwavering love. According to insiders, she spent months agonizing over the choice. Particularly for their children, Sunday and Faith, she had been devoted to keeping the family together. However, she came to the realization that she couldn't save herself and the marriage, as one acquaintance put it. In a relationship that was frequently characterized by chaos, she had played the roles of planner, stabilizer, and his anchor against addiction for years. At last, she decided to protect herself. According to the filings, she was requesting primary residential custody of the daughters, and he would share decision-making authority. The fact that both parties notably waived child and spousal support indicates that their finances had long been managed independently. Heath's response was far more audible, frank, and noticeable if her filing was the silent confirmation of the end. Most significantly, his wedding ring was removed when he was spotted a few days after the divorce news surfaced. He changed the words to 2 of his signature songs during his first show since the divorce, if that wasn't obvious enough. During his performance in Pennsylvania, he turned what could have been another stop on his energetic globe tour into a heated public discussion about his personal life, exposing an emotional tempest in front of thousands of admirers. He quickly gave away that this would be more than just a typical country concert when he performed for the first time since it was announced that he and Nicole Kidman were separating after over 20 years of marriage. The audience did not overlook his symbolic entrance onto the platform sans his wedding band. Additionally, his actions fluctuated throughout the night between rage, heartbreak, and an almost sensitive sense of nostalgia. The most shocking part of his 2004 breakup anthem, "You'll Think of Me," was when he twisted the line, "Take your space and take your reasons," into a venomous, "Take your unreasonable reasons." Many people took this lyric twist as a thinly veiled jab at Nicole and their marital dissolution. The image he permitted to play during Heart Like a Hometown, in which pictures of him and their 2 teenage daughters appeared in a slideshow, seemed to be a grudging nod to his family even in the midst of deteriorating relationships, starkly contrasted with this unfiltered outburst that was clearly frustrated. His full removal of the fighter from his set list was another thing that fans noted. A 2016 single that was thought to have been directly influenced by his relationship with Nicole and frequently performed with her in mind, indicating a conscious removal of their past together from his stage personas. He talked openly about his early years in between songs, recounting how his parents urged him to drop out of school to pursue music, as if to remind the audience and himself of the love that had carried him long before he became famous, married, and involved in scandal. There was yet more emotional upheaval ahead. His alleged intimacy with younger guitarist Maggie Baugh, who was conspicuously absent that evening, was the subject of rumors, but her shadow hung over the performance because of internet videos of him serenading her with changed lyrics at previous performances. The drama and intrigue surrounding his private life were further heightened by this absence and his abrupt set list adjustments. By the conclusion of the evening, it was evident that his performance had grown beyond a simple concert. The media landscape was abruptly turned upside down by the divorce papers and Keith's spectacular performance. Nicole was portrayed by the tabloids as the victim who had finally had enough of the drama. Due to his incapacity to provide for her and his troubles, Keith was portrayed as the unfortunate case. During public appearances, fans took sides, analyzing every word he sang and every glance she made. The spotlight's renewed glare was oppressive to Nicole. His theatrical movements made solitude impossible, despite her quiet filing, which she had done in an attempt to lessen the spectacle. All of a sudden, she had to react with the precise balancing of her public persona rather than with words. Weeks later, she showed up at a film festival sans her wedding band, keeping her composure but displaying a deep anguish in her eyes. The issue of family was at the center of the divorce. Nicole was still dealing with the loss of Isabella and Connor from her marriage to Tom Cruise. She was adamant that Sunday and Faith would not repeat their past. Her intention was made apparent in the divorce papers. She would house the girls for the most part, providing stability despite the chaos. It has also been reported that Keith consented without much opposition. His erratic lifestyle and touring schedule make him less suitable for daily parenting. However, experts pointed out that the arrangement broke his heart. According to a source, Keith loves those girls, therefore granting him primary custody had nothing to do with a lack of affection. The topic was reality. Nicole has closed herself off to her work and her daughters in the weeks after the filing. In Nashville, she was seen strolling hand in hand with Sunday and Faith. Her protective body language belied her composed face. She views survival as concentrating on her sphere of influence, which essentially consists of her children, her work, and her personal health. Keith, meantime, has given his all to the music industry. His performances are such electrifying spectacles that they also serve as therapy sessions. He visibly wept throughout some of his songs, and fans characterized his performances as anguish on show. His openness won him over viewers, but it also might have shown the truth Nicole has chosen to ignore. What are your thoughts on their separation? Tell us in the space provided below. I appreciate you watching. On your screen, press play to see more thrilling videos. Remember to hit the bell, like, and subscribe so you can be informed when a new video is posted.